And here we are for the second segment, segment 2 of this topic that I want to discuss. And this second segment is about the transition from paper-based to computer-based testing. For those who are less familiar with this, before the pandemic hit, so before I would say even in 2020, so before 2021, all the testing for the CFA exam took place in paper-based formats. So basically, you would book the exam for a specific date. So there was no flexibility, as you see in here, no flexibility to select the exam date. So it was usually a Saturday, and the candidates, basically showed up for the exam in the testing location pre-designated, which were mostly large hotel conference rooms, convention centers, so that because those had to be able to accommodate hundreds and even thousands of candidates, all piled into several rooms depending on the level in which they were in. I recall in my experience in June 2019 when I wrote the CFA Level 1 exam, my room had about I think 400 people, something like that, but people sitting for an exam on that particular occasion were, I would say, well over 1,000, because there were a lot of candidates, other candidates from level 1 and also from level 2 and level 3 on that particular occasion. And so at that time you are searched before you enter the room itself. You are seated in a designated seat, and then you are handed a paper booklet with the exam questions. Recall that level 1 is all multiple choice, so the paper booklet contains the exam questions. You're not supposed to write in that booklet, and you had a scanned front sheet to write those multiple choice answers. And so it was very, very it was a big risk that if you skip a question, you also need to skip a spot or a bubble in the scanned front sheet. Otherwise, all your answers will be completely messed up. So you gotta have extra attention to avoid making those kind of mistakes. And I recall that it was a daunting experience, as I say in another slide, on one of the next few slides, because you had, as I mentioned in here, you had multiple proctors, people walking around the tables throughout the exam. They were always checking out what you were doing, making sure that you don't speak to anyone, you don't look into exam of anyone, because you were sitting at tables without any separation between you and the candidate next to you. So they were really making sure that you don't look into other people's scanned run sheet. And so yeah, you were being spied all the time. And there was also a proctor in a podium, in a kind of a podium, in which with a microphone he would warn candidates, of course, when specific time milestones were remaining: 30 minutes left, 10 minutes left, 5 minutes left. I think he also mentioned 15 minutes left, if I'm not mistaken, and also 1 minute left. But of course, with a very solemn voice, like 30 minutes left to the end of the exam, 10 minutes left until the end of the exam, something like that, just to add some more pressure. And then this was the environment that you were looking at, or you were facing to an exam. Now, after 2021, and of course after and between and including 2021, I sat for the level 2 exam in May 2021. It was already computer-based testing. I tried to sit for June 2020 and December 2020 for the level 2, but in my location it was cancelled twice, so I could only sit for the exam in May 2021. And so candidates basically are, of course, also searched before entering the testing room, and you basically sit on the computer. You are facing a wall. You have barriers delimiting the computers, so you can't see what other people are doing on the screen, on their screens, and so you basically answer the questions using the keyboard and the mouse. In the case of multiple choice questions, you use the mouse, but with level 3 you have the essay or constructed response questions, and you have to use the keyboard. And also testing locations are now much smaller. They just can only accommodate like a dozen candidates, and you take turns in taking the exam, of course based on scheduling, and you are scheduled for a particular time and you need to show up at that time. And the testing window, because that also needs to last several days, so you can choose the date more conveniently. For example, you can book a Monday so that you can have the weekend available to make the last reviews, and so it makes it much more convenient. On Saturday is less so, because for the one reason that I'm going to explain later in the video, in this segment. And also, instead of having proctors around you, you have camera recording, and the exam administration program, which is also predefined, includes a stopwatch so that candidates remain aware of how much time is left until the end of the exam session, morning session and afternoon session. As you can imagine, in terms of these differences, I would say that even before anything else, and I will put some links in the description down below about some studies that are basically very compelling in the sense that they conclusively point out that writing down on paper vastly improves learning and memory relative to typing on a keyboard. Now, I know that you are being tested. You are not actually doing any studying during the exam, and most likely you did all your exam prep writing down things on paper, but still, the fact that you are being tested writing down on paper, it means that you are being tested using the tools that basically improve or makes a bigger, more lasting etching in your memory when it comes to the concepts that you are using in the exam or are applying during the exam. So I think this conveys the right message when you are doing a test which is paper based. I think is much better relative to a keyboard, to using the keyboard or a mouse to do your answers. And this is notwithstanding the fact, and I explained already this many times over my videos, that I had an issue with the keyboard on my level 3 exam, because I prepared myself using the keyboard with a Portuguese format, and the format was in the exam was the United States one, or rather the US Dutch keyboard, because in the Netherlands they use the US format with few tiny differences, but nonetheless, even regardless of that issue that I had, I think writing down on paper gives you more freedom to write what you need, and makes a bigger impact in terms of your memory and retaining that knowledge that you try to accumulate for such a long period of time. In terms of the testing experience, having paper-based testing, the prospect of when you enter a hotel or a convention center, you see hundreds and even thousands of hopeful candidates wanting to pass a test, and you sit in a room stuffed with people, and you only see candidates around. It's a completely different experience. It's more daunting, it's more intimidating, and especially the fact that you have people watching you like a hawk, and seeing what you do, trying to make sure that you are not copying or looking at other people's tests, or answers, I think it's far more daunting, more intimidating, and puts you under a lot more pressure than sitting just at a computer facing a wall, and you know that you have other candidates, like 10 or 12 other candidates in a room, in that same room, to sit for the exam. I think the whole experience is much more intimidating, and in candidates on paper-based testing were under a lot more pressure in that regard. Not only that, but having a proctor verbally announcing how much time is left, and you want to keep focus, you want to make sure that you are hitting the answers at the right time, because when you have, at the time we had 3 hours to do the exam in the morning and another 3 hours in the afternoon. So at the time, level 1 had 120 questions, so you basically had a minute and a half for each question, so you on average, so you know that you need to go through the questions at every 1.5 minutes. So trying to keep that pace, and for the other candidates, try to catch up on the time they already wasted with previous questions. I think all of this, and having someone pressuring you, saying this time is left, that time is left, I think it makes a bigger psychological impact on candidates than simply having a timer on the screen, which is always counting down, and so you are always aware at any moment that if you are falling behind or not. So I think it's a different experience. It's a more impactful experience, and it gives you at the end more resilience if you go through a paper-based testing than the computer-based testing. And I wanted to mention this because I don't think this is not that unimportant, is the fact that having testing days on Saturdays, meaning that you as a candidate, and at the time most people were working because you were supposed to have a bachelor's degree to apply for the program. You either had to take in personal time off, you had to take vacation days, or you had to study outside of working hours during that final week of the exam, before the exam, in order to make those last minute reviews. Whereas now, for example, it is possible for you to book to schedule your exam on Monday with computer-based testing. Of course, you have other days to book. You can book on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, on a Friday. But if you book on a Monday, you have the weekend to prepare. So, and you don't need to take time off from your work. You don't need to consume your vacation days. And so I think, and having the testing on paper-based testing on a Saturday after a working week, if you continue to work and you study outside of working hours, I think makes it much more difficult for you to face such a difficult exam as is a CFA exam. And so, taking everything into account, I would say that basically current candidates have an easier experience than pre-2021 candidates. I think it makes a lot of difference. Each of these aspects may not seem that relevant for someone who just never tried a paper-based test, but having done both of those, I did the CFA Level 1 exam on paper, the CFA Level 2 and the CFA Level 3 on computer testing, and I also did the CIA on computer, also the ESG investing from the CFA Institute, also on computer. So I got a taste of both, and I can tell that even though I was very much prepared, I was extremely prepared for the level 1 exam. The fact that you see, like, you enter in my case it was a hotel room. You enter the hotel and you see a sea. It's a mob of people in the lobby of the hotel. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people to sit for an exam, and then people nervous, checking out their notes. You see the pressure, and you see a lot of hopefuls you see a lot of hope in their eyes. You see some dismay because they felt, oh, I did not study enough for this and all that. Uh, it puts more pressure on you, and I think that in the end, unless you are really prepared, that pressure may get to you if you're not convinced that you did all the work that you could have done. And so I think, and of course in computer-based testing, you facing like 10 12 people. You see people coming in and out of the testing room. You see, yeah, you see much less people. People don't talk to each other, and it's a completely different situation. And so I think overall current candidates have an easier experience. But yeah, let's continue and stay tuned for the segment number 3.